ring if you're ready to care. Oh, let's talk power, let's talk speed. Hosted by the one and only We Too Deep. Turn it up loud, feel the power in your seat. This is slapping me, yes, slapping me.
And what is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Slapping Meat Community Show. I'm your host, We Too Deep, and we have a stacked discussion waiting for you all today. On this episode, a couple things are going to change with this one from standard episodes. Excuse me, it just was sort of the way this worked out in terms of things I wanted to talk about in each section. And, I already have a lot planned, and so B-Master, you asked very good questions in the questions from the Discord. I try to take as many questions as y'all have and answer those at the end of each show. With some changes happening with the football season ending, we're going to have a lot more time on this show to discuss wrestling topics. So I'm going to pause the questions for this week to pick, and we'll pick back up with questions next week. Nothing personal. Mainly, I already have a lot that I kind of want to discuss. Whether it's in the ropes with the wrestling conversation, there's a couple things I want to address that might take a minute. And then with my reaction to the Super Bowl, what I want to talk about with that, that sort of ending the show, and it's already sort of packed. Plus, I teased, if you follow the YouTube page, I teased a new segment to start on this episode, and we will definitely hit that as well tonight. And so, for that reason, the questions from the Discord will not happen on this episode. This was a last-minute decision that I made probably about an hour before I hit record, so that, and then secondly, the hot take heat check. This was a segment brought to me to do by Kara. And I don't dislike the segment. I think it has potential. I'm just going to be honest, though, right? In order for the potential to grow, there has to be, like, the whole purpose of the segment is I give a hot take, and we're supposed to discuss it. You guys are supposed to be the heat checkers and having that discussion, right? You break down my hot take, right? It's essentially supposed to be sort of like the, change my mind, right, type segments, right? And if that type of interaction isn't happening, then y'all know me. I'm the logical take, the guy who takes an extra 30 minutes to think about what he's about to say before he says it. And I'm not the hot take guy. I actually have very strong opinions about the hot take guys and girls in the podcasting community. These people who all they want to do is do hot takes. I think it's lazy. I think it's uncreative. And it's simply, one, it's not original. But it also, to me, it just tells me that all they care about is necessarily the clicks, right? Like, all they want is the engagement rather than conversation. And I never got into this. If I can just go on this topic for a minute. I never got into podcasting to get engagement. Obviously, it would be kind of stupid. And I've told this story 50 million times. That I got into podcasting as a place for me to vent. And to explain my feelings, not necessarily to have a listening base. Things came about, excuse me, that allowed me to grow a small listening base. And to me, we've started to build a community. And this is where I'll flip it back around real quick to hot take heat check. Is like, if we had 50,000 people in the Discord and we were discussing this segment, I feel like there's potential to continue to do hot takes. But we're not really necessarily discussing those. And I think that in order for the segment to work, we need to be able to discuss my hot takes. Because it takes me forever to come up with takes. Because again, I'm a logical person. Right? I'm a very logical person. I'm not the hot take guy, right? I'm the guy you come to argue hot takes. Like I'd argue hot takes. So maybe we flip around the segment, right? You guys give me hot takes to break down and to refute or to agree with if I agree with it, right? Right? Maybe we could do something like that. But then again, I'm also like not looking for hot takes. I'm not a huge podcast listener outside of the two. I listen to two political podcasts to get my because they're people that I trust to give me talking points that align with what I believe in, and aren't necessarily biased or right towards something else, right? And then I listen to every now and then I'm not really theologically deep, but it's a pastor out in Dallas who he has like the third largest Christian podcast in the country right now, and it's just him sort of breaking down pop culture things from a religious worldview, right? And so those are the three podcasts that I listen to. I don't listen to sports podcasts. I don't listen to, for two reasons. I don't listen to sports podcasts for two reasons. First, I don't care about any other team other than my teams. When it comes to Boston sports, I haven't found a podcaster that is independent, that doesn't work for like a radio station that is legitimate, right? That one, sounds entertaining and engaging, and two, is good at what they do. And then I just don't care about I don't want to listen to Pat McAfee. I don't have 3 hours to hear him blow V8. I don't care about Cowherd. The bigger stations like that, they produce content that I feel it's somewhat clickbaity, somewhat just awful takes. Just from the clips that I see, I'm not interested in listening to sports podcasts, and especially with a wrestling podcast. I just don't care about what Cornette has to say anymore. I don't care what Russo has to say. I don't care what, every now and then maybe I'll listen to a Chris Van Vliet interview, but I don't like podcasts that are strictly just interviews, all right? Especially when it comes to like wrestling and stuff like that. It's just not necessarily the funnest thing. I'll say this. Every now and then I'll turn on Julian Edelman and Rob Gronkowski's podcast, Dudes on Dudes, I think is what it's called. They have a somewhat entertaining podcast, but then it's not something that a new episode's out, I have to click on it, right? Because they're somewhat guest-based, so it's like, our guest today is so-and-so. And I'm not a fan of that style of interview-esque type podcast, right? I'm not a Rogan fan. I don't like Theo Von. I don't like stuff like that, right? I'm not a huge podcast listener. And so, I don't even know where I was going with that. I know we were talking about hot takes. The whole point of this is to say I'm not doing hot take heat check this week either. I don't know. I lost my train of thought in explaining all of that. So, with that being said, before we lose our train of thought again, what I will do is do a top 5 list. Now, what I originally had planned to do was do a top 5 men's and top 5 women that if I had to start a wrestling promotion, I would build that promotion around. And what that turned into is what the new segment that I'm going to do has turned into. And so we'll get to that here in a minute. So I had to change subjects. And I think just doing football or just doing wrestling based one of these are going to get very boring very quickly. And I want to sit here and talk about, real quick, I don't watch wrestling a lot, right? I hate to, I explain it to people this way. I watch wrestling, but I only watch when I want to watch, right? And I keep up with the news every now and then, but it's not one of those things, especially in the last, 6 months since the end of SummerSlam. So it's probably been closer to 8 months now at this point. Just sort of cleansed myself of needing to be a part of the wrestling community, right? I just don't have an interest in pro wrestling anymore outside of, I watched Rumble and I was interested, I was entertained, but being a part of, the news cycle and trying to keep up to date with it, I find that to be a very stressful way to watch wrestling. I don't know, I just feel like if I was that in tune with any other television show that I watch and I enjoy, where I had to be on top of every news story, it would be a pain in the butt, right? It would be stressful, right? And so for me, I'm just going to be honest. We might take a period of time over this year. We're going to contemplate this. This is where my head is right now before we jump into all of, the major subjects today. A lot of housekeeping to start the show. I'm going to take the next probably through when football season begins again. We'll think about it through September, right? The first week of September. And notice we're also going to do some college football conversation starting this year, right? So that starts the last week of August. So around that time, I'm going to contemplate if I want to continue discussing pro wrestling in the way that I do it now, because it's really a struggle. This week is different, but if you notice, this week, we're coming off of Rumble, and I'm somewhat engaged in what is happening, right? And this is about the time of year, the casual fan, which I would say I am, right? I wouldn't say I'm part of the quote-unquote casual wrestling community. I don't like to label myself as part of communities. I'm just a casual fan who enjoys wrestling from time to time, right? So we'll take the next, let's see, March, April, May, June, July, August. We'll take the next 6 months. We'll go through Mania season. We'll go through SummerSlam. And we got Money in the Bank in September. We will, at like the first week of September. We'll go through then. And we will figure out if I'm into wrestling. Now, what might change this a little bit is if and when YouTube TV gets the unlimited ESPN plan, that I'm 100% certain that I'll be able to watch all the PLEs live, right? And you got to understand, there's a lot of, and this is a topic that I'm going to discuss on Just Yapping on Friday about, we're going to talk about the halftime shows. So the only thing I won't discuss about the Super Bowl will be the halftime shows on this show, because I have a pop culture-ish podcast as well that I'm going to discuss that there. And part of that discussion, I'll just give you a sneak peek. We are going to break down why I thought Bad Bunny was why if we solely, let me put it this way, why Bad Bunny was essentially chosen. And there's some stats that I want to break down over the last 6-7 years since Jay-Z took over. Some of the patterns that we're seeing as we discuss, the halftime show, right? And so, and what the patterns mean, what I think the NFL is doing in its halftime show, and the artist that it picks, right? And there's a theme there. That theme, essentially, for you to just hold on to, is trying to grow an international audience, essentially to merge into the international lane, right? And so we see that a lot with, football. Just adding 2 new countries. Are going to Australia next year. They're going back to Mexico City. And, of course, they're in Berlin, Ireland. I don't think they're going back to Spain, but they got 3 London games, right? And so I think eventually the idea is to get teams in Europe. How that will work logistically is going to be interesting, but there's a reason why some of these artists over the last 7 years since Jay-Z took over, and we'll discuss that on Friday on Just Yapping. Excuse me, but I lost where my train of thought was going with this. Anyway, the whole point of this is, I don't know if my whole point of that was saying WWE sort of doing the same thing, trying to grow its global footprint. That's part of the reason, if I'm being honest, why I'm less interested in pro wrestling. As it expands to become a global product and not, right? So wrestling is global, but WWE to me should have stayed within the borders of America. And if this is where I'll sort of give in to the hardcore. Now, I'm not going to use their language of, they're being the bully, but what I will do is the concept they're talking about, I kind of am leaning towards. WWE has no purpose in building in Mexico. They have no purpose in building in Europe. They have no purpose of building Japan, right? Other than they want to dominate wrestling across the globe. And so I feel like if WWE as a company cared about pro wrestling, they would utilize their star power as a global force, as a global brand, to build up companies in different. So, like, I had no issue with NXT UK because it was a specifically UK brand, right? They fought in Europe, they stayed in Europe, they were Europe, right? And I'm fine with that. But what I'm not okay with, just to be honest, is the main roster spending the last 2-3 months overseas. And now they're just getting back from that tour. And right. And so because not only now are ticket prices through the roof, now you get less dates in America to go and watch. And they took away house shows. And, right, the PLEs are all overseas for the most point. Y'all know how I feel on this. I feel like in the quest of trying to build a global audience for your brand, you sort of forsaken the key demographic in America that built your company. And so that kind of conversation is gonna cross over into Friday on Just Yapping when we talk about halftime shows, right? But with that, I still want to do a top 5, so it's not anything wrestling or football related. I came up with a concept real off cuff, and is what do I feel the top 5 best soft drink, and by soft drink I kind of mean soda or pop if you're from the Midwest, or if you're down from the dirty South, you just call everything Coke. To me, my top 5 best sodas of, I'm not going to say of all time, because I haven't tried every single soda ever made, but just my 5 favorite, right? And these are actually in order. So we'll start with number 5. It's unique. It's definitely a unique taste. It's Grape Crush, and specifically Crush. Grape Sunkiss is gross. Grape off-brand or whatever is not good. Like, if you're giving me grape soda, I need Crush. It's the only grape soda I would, and I love grape soda. Right now, I've tried grape Fanta, not good. How have I tried? I don't think that's an actual flavor, but in the Coke Freestyle machines, it is, because you can just mix the Fanta syrup with the grape syrup in the machine, and now you have grape Fanta, right? Grape Fanta, not good. Grape Sunkiss, not good. Grape off-brand, not good. Grape Crush is fantastic, right? It would be 5th on my list. Number 4 is, again, it's brand specific. Excuse me. It's brand specific, and so the soda is root beer, and the brand, I feel the best brand of root beer is A&W. Just the best. And I don't know, what it is that to me makes it the best. I'm not that in depth with like flavor. There's a lot of people who go and like taste wine and they can tell the differences between wine. Or, I'm more of a whiskey or bourbon drinker. And there's the sort of what I would call hoity-toity, stuck-up people who they'll go do like a bourbon tasting or a whiskey tasting, and they'll be like, oh, this has floral notes. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't pick that up. Like, I'm not drinking whiskey for the flavor. I'm drinking it because of the effects that it gives, right? It's sort of like, I'm more of a beer drinker now anyway, and so, like, I don't know the difference between wet bread and the other wet bread, because all beer tastes like wet bread to me. I drink it for the effects, the liquid courage, that alcohol, right? And so for me, like, I don't know the differences between Mug and A&W. What I do know is Barks is absolutely gross. It's got a whole different flavor profile. To me, it's gross. But it's almost everyone's favorite, I know. But A&W root beer is is my favorite, and it makes my top 5 list. Third, you may not everyone may have heard of this drink or tasted this drink, and if you haven't, you need to find your way down to good old North Carolina or over, because I know Kara lives 3,000 miles west from me. Get on a plane, fly to the best coast, right? Fly to the best coast, called the East Coast, and and try you this drink in North Carolina specific. I think it's branched out to other states that you can find it. It's called Cheerwine. It's not wine. It is a soda. It's a cherry-flavored soda. I love this. This goes down like... I talk about, in terms of like fast food. I've said before, Cookout is a North Carolina staple, and it's my favorite thing, right? Our Cheerwine with Cookout is like North Carolina heaven, right? And so Cheerwine is number 3 of my favorite sodas. Number 2 is Mountain Dew. To me, there's only really 2 flavors I'll drink in those. That's Baja Blast and regular Mountain Dew. I could care less about voltage. I could care less about the blues and the reds and the special 4th of July. I just want Baja Blast when I'm eating Taco Bell or Mexican food or normal. And really, if I want a Mountain Dew, I'm just going to... Because Baja Blast is a everyday flavor now, I'm just getting Baja Blast. It's the best version of Mountain Dew. So I'm just doing that. If it's available, right? And so... but without a doubt, my number 1 favorite soda is Pepsi. And in the Cola Wars, Pepsi is the greatest. No matter what, Coke may have the largest and loudest fans. Pepsi is the greatest. I don't know what it is. There's definitely a difference between Coke and Pepsi in taste. I don't know what that difference is, and I can't explain it. But I know it exists. I'm not a, I'll drink Coke if it's available, and Pepsi maybe isn't. And in most restaurants, Pepsi isn't available. So, well, is Coke okay? Sure, why not? But when it comes, like if the two are side by side and I had to pick one, pick a Pepsi all day. It's my favorite soda to do. So with that, we're now going to turn into the brand new segment that I'm going to call We Too Deep Pro Wrestling. And this segment, I want to see how it works. We're going to do it. This really revolves around some of y'all guys' input. Right, I'm going to need some input. So essentially, here's how this is going to work. I was building the list for top 5 because it was going to be top 5 men, top 5 women. I built a promotion around. Well, then I was sitting there. I was like, well, it's really hard to choose 5. So I'm going to do 10 from each list. And then as I was building that out, I was like, well, let me ask ChatGTP how they would book this thing. And I was just bored at work one day. And then I had the idea, what if each week I sort of run a role play style promotion and read out results each week, essentially for, like, I'm running a promotion, right? And to see how you guys like how I book the show, right? With the help of my booking assistant, Chat GTP. And so the way this is going to work is, if I were to, so let's explore the concept. If money wasn't an issue and I was able to build my own promotion similar in a way to how Tony Khan was able to start AEW, right? Where he had money, he had the ability to produce some episodes and stuff like that. How would I run a product like that? So first off, the concept is going to be very TV-ish, right? So you know how like TV seasons run like 8 weeks or 12 weeks or 12 episodes, and then they take a break, and then they come back with a new season. And in television now, what they're actually doing is they're running 16-week or 16-episode seasons, and they're splitting 8 weeks in the winter, 8 weeks in the summer, or 8 weeks in the spring, filming the next 8 episodes. So in the fall they'll do 8 weeks. Over the winter they'll tape the next 8 episodes, air those in the spring, and then or late winter, right, beginning of the new year, finish those 8 episodes, begin filming the next 8 during the spring into the summer, releasing those, right? And so it's never-ending stream of content. Well, that is essentially how I would run a wrestling promotion. So there's a talk in the casual realm of wrestling needs an off season. And the more and more I've thought about this, the more and more I agree that wrestling should be episodic. It should be seasonal. I think the biggest issue with wrestling is that because it is 52 weeks a year, no breaks, every single week there's an episode, that it sort of has, to some it can weigh them down. I know the hardcore fans are going to watch wrestling no matter it's on. But the casual fan like me, then to know that I have to plan around watching this on Monday every night or on Tuesday every week or whatever show I'm watching every week, it can get a little bit taxing. Especially when you actually look at the wrestling content being created from the top 3 brands, AEW, WWE, TNA. Between those 3 companies, they take up every single day except Sunday. You got Raw on Monday, NXT on Tuesday, Dynamite on Wednesday, TNA Impact on Thursday, SmackDown on Friday, Collision on Saturday. And then if there's a PLE or a pay-per-view that runs on Sunday, now you have a 7-day week where if you're a hardcore of hardcore fans and you watch everything, you're busy 7 days a week. You can't watch all of that. There's too much wrestling. And so for me, I wasn't super into it because it, again, lucha style, Mexico style wasn't my favorite, but the concept behind Lucha Underground being very telenovela, over the top drama, storyline based, character based type wrestling, I thoroughly enjoyed it. The episodes that I watched. And so that's the concept here. We're going to call them seasons. And so I'm going to do one season every single week on this podcast. I'll go through one season. The first season is 4 weeks of booking plus a pay-per-view. So essentially we'll go through all the shows and the pay-per-view. That's a season. And I've explained this with how I would see wrestling, right? Not a lot of matches, a lot of story, a lot of promo leading to the match in the season finale, which will be the pay-per-view, right? So I've always seen it this way. The season finale, if you watch the show, like say, for me, one of the shows on Netflix that I like is Outer Banks, right? You're not going to give the same type of effort into episode 1 as you're going to into because episode 1's supposed to do 2 things. It's supposed to introduce you to the season, pick up where you left off the season before, if there was a season before, right? So pick up from where you left off, introduce you to the new season. If there's any characters, introduce them, introduce the theme of the season, introduce the story, get you into the story. And then, so if there's an 8-season episode 5, you're still halfway until the finale. So you have to carry out. So episode 1 might be interesting. Episode 3 might be a little boring. Episode 5 might be even more boring because you're sort of filling in the gaps within the storyline, right? And so, again, so I'll be honest with you. I've been very bored at work because it's slow season. I'm about 10 seasons into booking this thing, right? So we got content, right? I'm not going to continue booking past this point until I get, 10 weeks into this segment and seeing where we go. And so the first season is actually only 4 weeks long. And so that's what we're going to cover this episode on the podcast. I'm going to introduce the roster of 20 wrestlers. And then there's 10 men, 10 women. And then we will go through the first season of what I booked. And what I want throughout the week is you guys to tell me, hey, would you watch this if it was real? Would you tune into it? Did you like how it booked? Was it too, predictable or whatnot, right? So let's go over the roster real quick. So we'll start with the men's roster. Now, here's some of the assumptions I went off. Anyone's available. Money isn't a question. And I can build from any available pro wrestler. With that being said, my men's roster will fill out as followed. I'm building sort of younger with a few older talents to be more in place roles of developing the younger talent, right? So for the men, Obafemi was the first name I thought of. Secondly, Ethan Page, MJF, Ilya Dragunov, Ricky Saints, Javon Evans, Braun Breaker, Trick Williams, Leon Slater, and because I think he could give me some good matches, Kenny Omega. I know a lot of people aren't big fans of Kenny Omega. I like Kenny Omega. I think his presentation, he can be a heel, he can be a baby face, more likely to be a baby face, right? He can go up against some of my other guys. He can fight a Ethan Page, an Obafemi, or a Leon Slater and give me the same quality match. Right? I think he's never going to be like the guy, but I think he has enough of my respect to be like, put on some good matches here, right? If we go to the women's division, Sol Ruka, Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Liv Morgan. Those are going to be my foundation of this to start, right? And then what might be like more, what we would call the mid card or the lower card. We got a lot of AEW references or influence here because I think AEW's women's roster has a lot of potential talent in the system that they have that could be, if developed right, could be superstars. And so Willow Nightingale, Megan Bain, Harley Cameron, I think, is one that I could tune in. She could be very character-based. She's good on promos. She can wrestle somewhat, right? We'll put in a Brittany Baker is definitely needed. Then we'll do Kendall Gray. And last but not least on this roster, Maxine Dupree. Now, with the women's roster, I'll be honest, I was very, character interview, but more so who can do promos good, who can wrestle well, was on my mind. But a lot of what I was thinking of while I was writing down the roster was, when I put them on a poster, is the average guy going to want to tune into this? Because my mindset is AEW's got the hardcore of hardcores. WWE's got hardcores and casuals. Now, I would disagree that they have the casual of casuals. I still don't think that they're back. I think they come from Mania, but they're not invested in watching weekly episodic television. For me, if I were to build a poster, I'm just going to be honest and upfront with you, I need sexy blonde women. Not all of them on this list, but there's a reason why a Harley Cameron, you build a poster and you put Liv Morgan, you put Sol Ruka, you put Harley Cameron, you put Maxine Dupree on the poster, without any idea of what you're watching, you're probably going to draw a certain dynamic of man to tune into the show. And that's the type of dynamic I think a lot of wrestling programming is missing, is the uber casual, not invested. And I think if you can get them invested into wrestling, into watching, and then say, well, you only have to dedicate 8 weeks, 4 weeks, how many ever long week, an episode or season is. Let's just say 8 weeks. I think 8 weeks is about the average that I would do, right? You only have to dedicate 8 weeks at a time, and then we're going to go film again, and then you'll get another 8 weeks. And so you only have to dedicate 8 weeks of your life to this, and then you get an off season, right? And so with that was sort of my thinking. This is the type of fan that I'm trying to get. So with that, let me pull up my booking real quick. Give me 1 second to pull this up, and then we can go and discuss the first season of We Too Deep Pro Wrestling. All right. Let me... problem with using ChatGTP is I use it for practically everything I research. So, and then I've been so deep in booking this that I got to scroll all the way to the top. All right, here we go. So we talked about the roster. Oh, the setup character as well. Being that this is going to be character-based, sorry for that, I moved the microphone a little bit and dragged across something, but we're going to be character-based. There's one other character that from the jump I have to introduce, and that is essentially going to be the character that I would play on TV if I were to run this. And my name would go by, Bennett Randleman. It's the name I've been using forever on WWE 2K games. Bennett Randleman would be my wrestling name if I was ever a wrestler or a manager or whatever, right? In fact, I've questioned even calling myself that. I'm your host, Bennett We Too Deep Randleman, but no, we'll just continue to go by We Too Deep. And so I'm going to be sort of the GM figure. In my opinion, wrestling shows need a GM. And I believe, or some sort of authority, because if you don't have that, then you sort of just have a bunch of random matches or random things that happen. In normal life, in logical life, there's always some form of authority governing over you, right? Whether it's the speed limit because the government says you have to abide by those, or if you're at work, you have a boss, and unless you're the CEO and you're the top dog, you have a boss. But even then, the CEO has a boss. In most companies, if you're the CEO, you got to answer to the investors, right? Unless you're a privately owned company and you don't have investors, right? Your boss is the investors. That's who you answer to, right? So in normal life, again, I think I'm booking to an audience that wants logical, thought-filled, scripted, enjoyment on television, right? And so I would 100% present this as a television product, to the point of is I don't know if I would ever actually sell tickets to go to events other than the PLE. I don't know. That the whole presentation thing I haven't really thought through all the way if this were to be done. If I would have a live crowd or a paid crowd that I pay as like extras. That's probably the route I would actually go, because they're the ones that'll cooperate best, right? Because for some reason in wrestling fandoms, the idea that if I bought a ticket, I can act however I want is a mindset. It's toxic. I'm just going to be honest with you. But if I have a paid audience, say your job is to boo who I tell you to boo and cheer who I tell you to cheer, that's probably the direction I would go if I'm being honest. But with that being said, let's introduce the first season. So to introduce my character some more, to introduce the season some more, or my character some more, I'm sort of a tweener to start. We'll see how that character progression continues down the line. But sort of just someone I'm in charge. I let you know I'm in charge. More of a heel than a baby face. Like, I'm not there for love. I'm there to put on the best show in wrestling. And, I have standards. Just a standard boss. Like, think of a normal boss, right? Who's a little bit rude, a little bit like, hey, we have to beat these ratings. We have to produce the best show. If you're not giving me 110%, you don't deserve to be here type thing, right? And so with that, let's introduce the show. So week 1, the opening segment, of course, will be me walking. And for one final production note, one of the things that I really would love to do if I owned a company like this is the idea of one-take episodes, right? So WWE started doing some of this with its entrances, where they'll have people come from backstage and they'll just follow them all the way till they get to the ring or whatever. And even then, I think the WWE does it still feels so fake, right? So I'm talking about like one-take episodes where we don't stop. There's no commercials, right? This would be so immediately. I would put the episodes on YouTube for free. I think that's what Tony Khan should have originally done with AEW. If I could go on this aside real quick. So Tony Khan announced AEW in January of 2019. I think they had a pay-per-view event in May, and their first ever episode of televised television was in October. They held one show between January and October, held one show. If I was Tony Khan, the way I would have gone back and fixed that is, I'm going to run weekly television. I got a TV deal for October, but I'm going to run weekly episodic television on YouTube, right? Until from Cody Rhodes' training gym or wherever, I can tape matches or even if it was just taping promos and setting up story. Imagine setting up storyline from January to your pay-per-view event you held in May, because there was no reason. I think that was the first Double or Nothing, right? And there was no storyline going into that first Double or Nothing. It was just a bunch of random matches. And I think if you were trying to get the WWE-type fans who were irritated at the time at Vince McMahon's booking, storyline would have been a great way to do that. And to capitalize and introduce your characters. Then you could have built from that pay-per-view to the October debut with more storyline on YouTube. And so for me, I wouldn't want to be on TV anyway. It would be it would be on YouTube. Again, not live, taped on YouTube. Potentially on television at some point, because, but I think YouTube is great because it's free. Everyone can get it. Right? And so, and if it was at the point to where money didn't really necessarily matter, I don't know if I would even monetize it at all outside of pay-per-view buys, right? So that would be the thing where, okay, now you have to either subscribe to the YouTube page or they have, what is it called? Like community, something where you pay to get bonus content or whatever on there. And so from a production standpoint, we're doing one-take episodes. And so when this opens, this is going to open with the camera from right outside of my office. So the intro hits, everything's finished, and the intro plays, music plays, it finishes, the camera then shows up, and it's outside of my office, right? So the camera starts at my office, I open the door, I walk out, right? I walk to the ring, the camera follows me to the ring, again, one take, right? Maybe we'll flip camera angles every now and then, but, right, but this is one take. So the camera's following me, I'm going through, it's the debut episode, I come out, and I introduce, we're not here just to be a wrestling show, we're here to be the best wrestling show in the world, right? I then, one by one, introduce the talent onto the stage, right? You introduce the world to who our superstars are, right? One little character development that you picked up early with my character is a little bit of a playboy, a flirt. I think that's an interesting storyline, but also one that is sort of a real power dynamic in some companies where you have the boss who's a little bit flirty, right? And if you want to get that promotion, flirt around, play around, right? And so that's sort of the idea in building that. And we'll see where that leads throughout the seasons. Like I said, I'm 10 seasons in. I'm thoroughly enjoyed with what I'm seeing. So I hope you agree with that as well. So as I'm introducing the roster, Liv Morgan comes up, light flirting with Liv Morgan, right? Handshake Kenny, like an awkward pause when MJF comes out, right? MJF, leans into me and says, hey, bro, you think you're the one who runs this place. But, I look back at him like, that attitude's cute, right? Again, setting up potential, drama there, right? Dragunov is steady staring down MJF, never breaks eye contact, which sort of is going to set up the first major feud of the company, right? You see that just in the facial expression, right? So that's the first segment. Essentially, the message going to be coming out over the next 4 episodes is convince me why you should be champion, right? Because that's what we're trying to do here this first month is who's going to be the champions, right? All I say in this first promo as I introduce the crowd is we'll crown our first champions at the first pay-per-view. We're going to call them pay-per-views because we're not WWE. At the first pay-per-view, we'll crown the first women's and men's champion, right? So then the roster goes backstage. I come up, shake everyone's hand, right? They all leave. The camera follows me back to my office, and I'm going to be the central figure of this, right? As the camera follows me, we're backstage, we're going through Gorilla, I'm trying to walk back to my office, right? And you hear Britt Baker, complaining, and so the camera then turns and looks at Britt Baker, and she's complaining to production about the lighting for her entrance being too soft, and Willow sort of over there hearing her, and she's laughing at Britt, and maybe she says something slick to her, right? Oba sort of ignoring everyone by himself. And so with the one take, the cameras can sort of revolve around and show the whole atmosphere. Oba sort of ignoring everyone. Right? The Dragunov and MJF meet up. And you know, give me one. Let's see here. So what happened with season 1 is I made a lot of changes, so I gotta make sure I'm at the right area of where I'm at. Alrighty. Because I just accidentally scrolled up. Okay. Well, this is not going well already. I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to copy and paste this into my notes next time instead of using the ChatGPT app, because you click the wrong part of the screen, it's going to scroll to the top or to the bottom. Okay, I think we're here. Here we go. Yep. Braun Breaker. Okay, so Oba's ignoring everyone. Camera turns around. He sees Braun Breaker sort of staring down Oba, right? We then, right? We then see Trick Williams walk past the camera, and the camera follows him to the ring. And he has the first match ever against Leon Slater, right? Very athletic match, but Trick wins. You know, the camera turns after Trick wins, and I'm on the stage sort of applauding. Behind, you know, in the shadows, as the camera sort of zooms around the crowd, the paid crowd extras that I have, you sort of see, it stops and it points the camera behind Trick, you know, and you see a shadowy figure, but nothing there, right? The face is unseen, but you sort of see a silhouette watching from the shadows, right? And this first episode is going to be very short. Again, I think that's the fun thing with doing this on YouTube, is the first episode is solely there, introduce, you know, me doing promo, introducing everything. We'll do a match to get that out of the way. Again, a lot of these segments, the Oba segment, the Trick Williams segment, again, you know, an hour-long show with one match on it. I think it's fun, right? The ending sort of shot as, you know, they point to me. I walk back to my office, and the ending shot is as I'm walking back. The camera stops as I sort of fade into the distance, and Dragunov walks past MJF. They bump shoulders. They stare at each other. Neither of them apologizes. We fade to black. There's episode 1, right? Episode 2, the next week, you know, we have a cold open. We see security footage of like an empty hallway. You hear echoes of footsteps. You see a masked figure walk past the camera. It fades to black, like the camera gets cut. Then the intro music plays, and the intro video logo plays, right? We come back from that. We're one-taking this, right? So the intro and all of that plays. We come back to live feed, and I'm starting the show again, walking down. I announce the titles, but again, sort of, I don't clarify how we're going to crown a champion. we're just gonna crown a champion, right? I then walk backstage again. You then hear Ethan Page then walks up to me, and he tries to compliment me, right, trying to kiss ass, right, because that's what Ethan Page does. And I sort of look at him and I'm like, bro, Ethan, I got a show to run. Can you get out of the way, right? And as I then turn around to go walk towards the office, camera follows me. Kenny Omega sitting there, sort of shaking his head, unimpressed at Ethan Page. Right, we're setting up these potential feuds, right, for the first pay-per-view. We then have Maxine Dupree in a match with Willow Nightingale. Quick match, Willow wins. Britt Baker sort of on the stage, slow clap, walking down the ramp. Right, that segment ends. Cameras follow them backstage. Or maybe cameras turn to the commentators and they say, well, we have such and such backstage with a short backstage interview with Ricky Saints. Cameras then flip to Ricky Saints. We're doing this interview. The lights start to flicker. You can hear me sort of in the background again because this is happening backstage and things happen back. It's one of the things, like, I'll just be honest, it's one of the things that I think wrestling misses in how they show themselves is everything feels too clean and not realistic, right? If the lights were flickering during a segment, you would probably hear someone from production be like, hey, can someone check the cords? Or, someone is probably flipping out, right? So Ricky Saints is doing this promo. The lights start to flicker. I'm sitting there cussing. Could someone figure out what the hell is going on? Right? You hear me sort of in the distance doing that. The camera cuts, right? And then a masked figure, comes up as the camera comes back on. There's a masked figure behind Ricky who attacks him, chops Ricky Saints to the knee, throws Ricky into the equipment cases, right? Again, they see black boots, taped fist. He's still masked. We don't know who it is. There's a soft whisper that's barely inaudible, like you can't hear it. And then he vanishes. Again, this is being taped in like a warehouse because, that's what... no need to rent out arenas. We're taping this in a warehouse. So he goes through like the loading dock, right? And then so again, one take. This is important and how this is produced. So then I come running in there, mad, furious. Security. I call for security. The first security guard that shows up, I grab him and I'm like, how the hell did this happen? What are you guys doing? You're not even doing your job right. Like, I'm irritated, right? And I was like, here's what we need to do. Shut all the doors, lock every entrance. We need to find out who this guy is, right? Right? And so we go on, have another match. We'll do Devon Evans versus Kenny Omega, right? Again, the match really doesn't necessarily happen. You'll have another match. After the match, we go back up the ring. Kenny Omega wins. The match is over. Camera guys are following them backstage. They see me walking past, storming towards medical, and so the camera starts to follow me. I storm into medical, and I'm like, bro, is he good? How's this going? He was supposed to be in that match or whatever, right? Maybe that's what the promo's about, him hyping up the match. He was supposed to be in the match against Javon, not Kenny Omega, right? And so Ricky gets put out. Kenny shows up and says, hey, I'll go have the match. To take this off your shoulder, you stay with Ricky, I'll go have the match. And I'm like, sure, go do that, right? So then you see me back with Ricky in medical. How's he doing? I'm right. We still got security guards back there who, we're watching film in medical, where I'm just looking at film to see if we can figure out who this guy is. And all the security guards are like shaking. They're like, are we going to lose our job type thing, right? Excuse me. Right. I walk out of medical, the camera turns around, and as it turns around, they see sort of Rhea there, unamused, sort of smiling. Right? And that's sort of the ending. There's that. Then I walk back out. or the camera goes back out. There's another camera as we, sort of have the final shot being commentary, sort of closing the night. And behind commentary, you see the masked attacker watching from the upper levels, and it fades to black. There's episode 2. Right? So things are happening, right? Episode 3 happens. We get a cold open again. Ricky Saints had, icing his knee. Me, with me there talking to him, making sure he's clear, right? Sort of, the cold open is sort of recapping what happened the week before. Then the show opens. I'm in the ring, just irritated, right? Someone here thinks chaos earns opportunity, but that's not how this works here at We Too Deep Pro Wrestling. You earn it. You're not just handed things, right? Demands that the attacker comes out, met with silence. So then we have to continue with the show. I walk backstage. MJF is arguing with Dragunov. And MJF is like, bro, Dragunov, you're too wild. You're too unpredictable. You're a walking injury. Dragunov looks at him and says, MJF, you talk a lot, but I finish. Right? So then I hear this as I walk past and sort of just, I grab a notebook and I write something, assuming that I'm booking a match. That's the concept that I would try to book, right? We then have a match, Bianca Belair versus Sol Ruca. Very good match. This would be a banger match anytime it happened, right? Banger, high athletic match. During the match, Rhea circles the ring like a shark. And Liv is at commentary. Like I said, these are going to be the 4 sort of pillars of the women's division. You guys can probably tell where this is headed for the first pay-per-view. Again, that's the whole point, by the way. Like I said, predictability is not a bad thing. You should figure out where things are going. So Liv is watching from commentary. Right? After the match is over, it ends in a DQ as Rhea interrupts and attacks and gets involved in the match. Ends in DQ when the match is over. The lights come out. A spotlight shows up. The masked attacker is there. Slow walks down the ramp. Gets into the ring. You can't see anything but the masked attacker. Removes the mask and reveals himself. And it's Dominic Mysterio. And he grabs a microphone. And by this point, I'm halfway down the ramp trying to get my hands on this guy. And I stop in my tracks, right? He takes the mic. He looks right at me. He says, you said to convince you. 2 weeks ago, you said to convince you. Turns to me. Well, I learned from the best. Drops the mic. Lights come back on. And he's standing with Rhea. Right? Actually, pause that. I read it wrong. I read my own writing wrong. So, Rhea interrupts the match. That's over. Right? This is a completely different segment. Rhea's backstage, though. So, I turn around, walk back. Camera follows me through the curtain. End the shot with Rhea smiling. Again, it's now alluding to they're working together. The go-home show week 4. Right? Go-home show. Open in my office. Right? Me and Dom. Dom leans back and says, look, I don't wait my turn. To which I say, well, you know what? I respect that because neither did I. Haven't announced a match yet. But we're getting there, right? So I then go out and say, hey, Dom, I got a show to run. Got a pay-per-view this weekend. Let me go announce these matches. And I go out and announce we're going to have Willow versus Britt. We're going to have Omega versus Ethan Page. Oba versus Braun Breaker. To crown our first ever women's champion. Right? And actually, again, I this is the first time I started making adjustments because I didn't like how they booked week 4. I forgot this. I rebooked week 4 because I didn't like it at the end because it really didn't set up what I wanted. So let's do week 4 properly. I start in the ring. I don't reward chaos. I reward results is essentially how I started. I address Dominic and say, you wanted attention. You got it. You want a match at the pay-per-view. Then you win tonight. And I make Dominic Mysterio versus Ricky Saints. I add no interference. You lose. You disappear. Right? Dom looks at me. He smirks. And we walk. Right? Sol Ruca walks out. She then comes out and says, hey, I was attacked just like Bianca was. Remember, Rhea attacked Bianca, right? So Sol Ruca then comes out and is like, wait, how are you going to do... Because the initial plan was Bianca, Liv, Rhea. That's the initial plan, right? For the title. And Sol Ruca says, wait, I was attacked as well. And so I say, you know what? You want in the title match? You got to win. Beat Megan Bayne. You win and you're in. Right? So I said, you know what? Bring out Megan now. Let's do this. Right? Megan Bayne sort of overpowers Sol. Sol's got to play this underdog character. She keeps escaping, uses her speed, hits the Soul Snatcher, and wins, right? I come out, confirm it. All right. At the pay-per-view, Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Liv Morgan, and now Sol Ruca. Winner becomes first official world champion. I then walk backstage. I go to the office, and sitting in there is Britt and Willow. Britt's like, Sol doesn't belong. Willow's like, neither do you. And I look at him. I'm like, get out of my office. I haven't announced anything yet. We then get Braun Breaker versus Javon Evans. Braun just absolutely rolls through Javon, destroys him. Oba then challenges him. Afterwards, I look at him and I say, don't do it right now. Not yet. Not yet. Right? We then have some pre-taped, promos between Dom and Ricky, where Dom's sort of like, I grew up in chaos. This is going to be easy. And Ricky Saints is like, I'm not going to let this punk control my destiny. It's a little cheesy, but you get the point. So then we get the main event. Dom versus Ricky Saints. At some point, Dom, works on the leg. Ricky's gonna, do the big baby face comeback. Tries to do a springboard. The knee gives out. Dom hits a frog splash. 1, 2, 3. Dominic. Dominic wins, so he's gonna get a match at the pay-per-view. Because I come out and I say, you know what? Good job. You've earned a match at the pay-per-view. You'll redo Ricky, right? You'll face Ricky again, right? That's going to be your first big match. I then close the show announcing the pay-per-view matches. Right? And with that, I announce MJF versus Dragunov for the World Champion. Rhea, Bianca, Liv, Soul for the Women's. Oba versus Braun. Omega versus Ethan Page. Willow versus Britt. Dominic versus Ricky. Right? And so to end this segment for this week, we'll book the pay-per-view. Right? Season finale type thing, right? So we open the pay-per-view with red and blue lights on the concrete. Ricky Sainz is laid out. Medics are working. There's blood. He's bloodied up. Heavily taped knee. I come running beside him. Angry, cursing. Who the fuck did this? Ricky's saying he didn't finish the job. I'm still alive. And I look at him. I said, but he made it worse. I said, Ricky, I'm not letting you fight tonight. Right? Cut to black. Pay-per-view logo hits. Right? Music plays. By the time all that's over, I'm now back in the arena, in the ring. And I mentioned Dominic. And I said, Dom, you thought you could take shortcuts. So here's the correction. Dominic, you want deep water. Now you don't get to breathe. And a graphic shows up. And it's Dominic versus Javon Evans versus Trick Williams versus Leon Slater. And it's sort of a simple way to continue a story between Dom and Ricky, but also get some of the other guys on the pay-per-view card, right? While doing that, I then say, well, also, we're going to start the night with another match in a women's showcase. Maxine Dupree versus Kendall Gray versus Harley Cameron versus Megan Bain. And again, a showcase fatal four-way, right? Which starts the show. Maxine's going to play to the crowd. Harley's going to cheat constantly. Kendall's going to wrestle technically. And then Megan Bain's going to be the big monster that everyone tries to attack, right? The finish sort of goes with Bain powerbombing Harley. We all know how fatal four-ways end, right? Everyone's going to try to get in their moves, right? Bain powerbombs Harley Cameron. Kendall tries to roll up Megan Bain, but fails. Megan Bain then powerbombs Maxine, and then turns around and picks up Kendall and powerbombs Kendall Gray, which Megan Bain then wins, stands tall. You turn backstage. Rio's watching the screen, sort of intrigued and excited, right? Match 2, Willow Nightingale versus Britt Baker. Quick, simple match. Willow Nightingale is going to, counter Lockjaw and win the match, right? Willow celebrates. Britt's arguing with the ref, sort of humiliated, right? We then move to match 3, Kenny Omega versus Ethan Page. Page is going to try to cheat and go for a cheap shot. Omega hits the V-trigger, hits the one-wing angel. Kenny Omega wins, right? Omega helps Page up. Ethan Page sort of throws Kenny off of him. He's humiliated, right? And angry, he just walks away, right? We then get Braun Breaker Obafemi. This is just, again, this is going to be something that gets set up for future seasons. So there's no real lockups. Just beating the hell out of each other, right? Just beating the hell out of each other. Commentary barely talks. I think one of the big things I have against modern wrestling is commentary talks too much. We don't get to just sit there and enjoy what's happening. So commentary barely talks. The crowd's just stunned by the amount of this pure power and size. And the match actually ends outside the ring with a 10 count. No one wins, right? And you're like, oh, boo, that's bad booking. Wait until you see what this turns into, right? They all get up at the 10 count, realize the match is over, And so now they're starting to beat the shit out of each other again. Security floods into the arena. I come out there, grab a microphone and say, guys, stop it now. Ref says match is over, but this isn't over. We'll pick this up later, right? We then get Dominic, Javon, Trick, and Leon Slater. Fatal 4-way. Dom tries to play the coward. Tries to leave through the crowd. I walk out, grab a mic. Dom, if you leave, you're never coming back here again. So, right, security goes and blocks Dom. Right, continues the match. The finish is sort of, again, Leon's getting his stuff in. He hits a dive. Javon hit a dive on Dom. Javon hits a springboard on Leon. Trick gets up, throws Javon out of the ring, hits a trick shot on Dom Mysterio, and Trick Williams is going to pull up and pull off the victory. And Dom is rolling out sort of angry, right? We then get the women's world title, fatal 4-way. The story of this match, Rhea's going to dominate. Bianca sort of matches the power of Rhea. Liv is surviving, and Soul is just doing what Sol Ruka does and putting on a good match. Razzle dazzle out there, right? Again, the finish here. Bianca's going to KOD Rhea, push her out of the ring. As she's pushing Rhea out of the ring, she turns around straight into a Soul Snatcher. Liv then crawls into the ring, throws Soul's sort of playing to the crowd. She's about to win the title, right? Liv comes behind her, throws Soul out of the ring, pins Bianca. The first women's champion is Olivia Morgan. Liv Morgan is sort of crying in the ring. Bianca is angry. Rhea's mad. Soul's sort of shocked. Like, oh, almost had it, right? And then your main event, MJF versus Ilya Dragunov. MJF obviously is going to cheat a lot. Dragunov's going to absorb punishment and be aggressive. The finish is Dragunov headbutts MJF. H-bomb. Typical finish to a Dragunov match. And Dragunov will win and become the first men's champion. The final sort of scene to end the first season is Dragunov holds the belt. I'm coming down. Liv is in the ring now, holding her belt. I come out, grab a microphone, and say, "This is the standard." The camera pulls back. You see the champions in the ring. They pan around to the stage, and all of the other, roster standing on the stage, right? And you fade to black. And you end season 1 that way. So with that being said, I would love to know what you all think about this segment. Would you want me to continue this? Do you like that booking? And if so, let me know. Well, I'm going to do this at least 3-4 more weeks, but if it's not something you guys would like me to continue doing, again, let me know. We'll stop it, right? But I'm going to give it at least a month to get you guys into it, right? Let me know what you think about the actual booking of itself as well. All right, so now that we got all of that done in 90 minutes, let's actually talk about what you're here to listen to. So, I'm going to make some changes because with football ending, I'm not going to have a lot of football talk. So I was going to do a segment on NXT because there's always actually, you know what? We'll just continue with it. We'll try to not take too long. Again, I want to try to keep these episodes around 2 hours. But this might not be possible on this one. We might be around 2.5. Anyway, there comes a time, it feels like, at the beginning of every year where I have the conversation on, is NXT developmental? And my conclusion every year is that NXT is not developmental. I've been trying to convince people of this since I started this podcast back in 2022. I just don't believe NXT as a whole is developmental. I don't believe the way WWE presents it is developmental, because we see on LFG that there's a Performance Center contract, and then there's that NXT contract. That the developmental system happens in the Performance Center, and it's not until you're fully developed that you then make it on television. And so, my perspective of NXT is that WWE considers it a third brand. In 2023, they filed, once the merger finally cleared with TKO and everything, they had to file with the government. In that actual filing, they stated that NXT has evolved into our third brand. And so that's how they see it corporately, is a third brand. I have a better way to describe it. I view NXT as AAA baseball, right? So for those who are not baseball fans, who don't know how baseball works, you have your Major League Baseball, that's the MLB, so that's Red Sox, Giants, Dodgers, though no one cares about the Dodgers here, do they? Braves, Yankees, right? That's the majors. That's like the creme de la creme of baseball, right? And underneath that, you have the minor leagues. So you have AAA, AA, Single A high, Single A low, and then you get sprint or summer ball, right? And what typically happens is if you get drafted, most players start out in Single A, whether in high or low, depending on talent. Some go down to the summer league, and those are for the players that are probably like 17, 18, and need a lot of work. Those are like your 50th round draft picks, right? But most players that are going to make an impact on your what we call the farm system will probably start at Single A. Your developmental in baseball and pro baseball is Single A and Double A. Those levels develop you for the majors. AAA baseball are players that are major league ready, but either there's not enough room on the roster. You only can carry 25 on the major league team until the playoffs. So there's either not enough room on the roster, or you're just not, with your only being able to carry 25, and you're probably carrying 12 pitchers. So you can really only carry 12 position players and a DH, right? So you're carrying your DH, you're carrying first, second, third. There's 9 positions or 8 positions outside of pitcher. So 8 positions, DH is 9, and then 3 bench players essentially. And so if you're in a position, let's say you have a really good first baseman, right? And but we're not carrying 2 first basemen, right? Because maybe the DH also plays first base. So we're going to play, right, and or whatever, right, with how the roster ends. So you'll play, but you can play if you were on a different team that doesn't have a good first baseman. You could play in the pros and be fine, in the majors and be fine, right? AAA baseball is essentially you just have to prove to us that you're better than the guy above you. You're sort of in holding, right? And that's what I compare NXT to. All the developmental happens in the Performance Center on LFG and Evolve. And then when you get to be a full-time NXT member, you're ready. They trust you. You can be on TV, and right. But my biggest thing is, because where this really comes from is, I just don't. Someone like Ethan Page, right? Ethan Page is not in developmental, and so the argument is, well, he should be on the main roster then. To which I will say, one of two things: A, have you seen how they've treated main roster? Not very well, right? That pipeline doesn't get treated very well, even under a Triple H regime. But secondly, if you take all the established stars from NXT, you have to, right? Then the show doesn't get better, right? Ethan Page is someone that you can put on a poster, send to Mexico for AAA. You can put on a poster, and if you build it correctly, he can be recognizable. My argument is Obafemi, Trick Williams, Joe Hendry, this roster that we left, Sol Ruka, Zarya. I would even argue like you should have kept a Julia and a Stephanie Vaquer down in NXT and had what I would have offered, honestly, is NXT as your counter programming for the marks. Because I'll be honest, when I watch wrestling, I prefer NXT because it's enough entertainment, but there's still enough wrestling to be enthralled in it, right? Every now and then I love a good match, right? And so I would argue what they should have done is, well, let me show you where the actual best wrestle. And built a roster on good storylines, good characters, and great wrestling. And had an Ethan Page, Ricky Saints, Oba, Trick, Carmelo, Dragunov. I would have even sent like Gunther to NXT, Lyra. I would have your heavy wrestling type people come in, and then on your Raws and your SmackDowns, where all you really care about is really how to build. So that's where you put your your Liv Morgans and your Rheas and your Biancas and your Jades and the girls who look good. Blake Monroe and Carmen Petrovic. Carmen Petrovic is stunning. Put her on a poster without the swords, like just have her be like a pretty blonde and she can sell tickets. Chelsea, Maxine, right? And have them be there for that. And have NXT be your heavy wrestling show. And be the counter programming to what AEW thinks it is, right? That's what I would have done. Just as a third brand on its own, standalone events. This argument that, they don't have a WrestleMania. Well, ask Wavy D how he felt about Stand and Deliver last year. I'm pretty certain he has said that Stand and Deliver was better than both nights of WrestleMania as an event. Right? That may not have had the best match of the weekend, though I would argue Trick, Javon, and Oba was a banger of a match that we're probably going to have again on SmackDown. Right? But so my argument that I'm really arguing for this year as I talk about this is NXT should have its own unique roster, that Ethan should stay, that we should probably bring down a Johnny Gargano. We should probably bring down a Street Profits, because I think the Street Profits are good, as a wrestling tag team. We should bring down Motor City Machine Guns. We should bring back Fraxium down. And maybe I'm a little bit biased because I miss some of these talents on NXT, but my argument is that we can have it as a third standalone brand, not on the same level as Raw and SmackDown, but standalone by itself. And that I don't like the call-up language. I don't like the developmental language, because I don't think that is necessarily what the point of NXT is anymore. I think it used to be that, but I think internally, Nick Khan was in an interview even as far back as 2023 saying that he believes that NXT could be its own standalone brand. And I thoroughly believe that's the goal they're pushing to. I think the reason they aren't going to fully move into my way of view is to keep the investors interested in keeping NXT alive. They like to push these numbers of, well, 95% of Monday Night Raw comes from NXT, right? They got to continue to sell. Again, a lot of it is backstage politics and selling to the investors, right? But my question then is NXT developmental? And my answer would be no. The second thing that I want to talk about real quick is Stephanie Vaquer got new music. And this is one of the things that I talk about with why. I get you don't want to pay the leasing for the song, but it fit her. And this new one is trash. I'm just going to be honest. It's trash. I ain't got much more to say. I just don't understand. Right? When you the problem with, and Royal Rumble just happened. How many of the songs did you recognize the wrestler by? Right? We still have this Def Rebel problem where, you know, we don't know who's coming down when the music plays. And when you have something like Stephanie Vaquer, who has a very unique entrance song, I mean, outside of Kit Wilson, I can't think of a song. You know, maybe Trick Williams is, you know, very distinguishable. Oba's is distinguishable, but how long are they going to keep these for? Now that they're on the main roster, right? I just don't understand the whole concept of having this character, investing so much in the character, and then changing it once they get moved up to Raw or SmackDown. Just makes no sense to me. AEW, you know, I talked major props for how they showed Ciampa week 1, gave him the title. Well, week 2, he's named it Sylvie. It's they're running his NXT gimmick, and I get it. It was a great gimmick. But can you be a little bit more creative? This is the thing about AEW, is it comes off as purely Tony Khan booking nostalgically. He's booking from like, oh, I love WCW when they did this with Sting, so I'm going to put Sting in this, right? Or I'm going to make Darby the next Sting, or I love such and such event when we did this, so we're going to do this. And I love DCW, so we're going to do this. And he's booking nostalgically. And so this is just, to me, like, oh, we got Ciampa, hey, we're just going to run your NXT gimmick, right? And it makes zero sense to me why you would do this. It's so uncreative. I don't necessarily think it matters to a lot of your, I don't know. I just feel like you should be a little bit more creative and not so nostalgic, right? And then Wavy D asked a question or just a thought he had about Tiffany Stratton, and he sort of asked the question: did we miss Tiffany Stratton while she was gone? And this was actually something I've been thinking about since she lost the title and Jade's been the champion. And I'll be honest, I'm not been super thrilled with Jade Cargill's title run either. But I'll answer the question the same way Wavy D did. I honestly, if I would have been paying attention hadn't even noticed that Tiffany Stratton wasn't even on the show. I didn't even know she was injured. To be honest with you, I didn't know that she was hurt. I didn't know there was like an injury bug going around with people who have wrestled Jade. I guess BFAB's hurt now too. But yeah, it's I just Tiffany. Again, she's one of those I felt should have stayed at NXT because she had a character and she was unique and she could have been put on the poster and sold the this idea of treating NXT like it's only meant to be the developmental system for the main roster. I don't buy that labeling. I don't think they buy the labeling internally. And I think that there's some things they're trying to, statistics they're trying to prove to the investors. That's one of the so I'll compromise with this. Maybe it's a hybrid. Maybe it's a little bit of developmental and a little bit of its own brand. But I don't even know if I want to sit there, because I don't believe that it's developmental at all. I think for the most part obviously there's, but I'll also say this. Here's another argument I want to throw back out there. If it was solely NXT as developmental, why would they not send Maxine Dupree down to NXT as a full-time women's competitor, rather than have her get her training on the main roster? You see what I'm saying? The best develop at every level of right? If I'm the best player on the Orioles, right? That's not a necessarily great team. I still have room to develop. The best athletes never stop developing. I heard something with Drew Brees. He's now in the Hall of Fame, and they were doing an interview with him, and they asked him, when did you start to feel like you were the top of your game? And he's like, it wasn't until I was in year 15 in the NFL. Right? 15 years in his career that he was throwing the ball the best of his abilities. And he basically said along the lines, you could always get better. And I thoroughly agree. You can be developed on Raw. We saw that with Maxine Dupree, where she came in the ring, couldn't wrestle. They trained her, put her back in a match, and she's overnight superstar. You can be developed on Raw. You can be developed on SmackDown. You can be developed anywhere in wrestling. To simply sit there and say all NXT is good for is to develop the future of the company, I disagree with. I do. It's just not the way that I see them using NXT. I feel like I have this conversation every year, and probably will continue to. But NXT, in my opinion, just isn't developmental. All right, let's get to the point that I think all of you have been waiting for. It's the title of this episode. It's the last little segment of the podcast. But before, I'm going to make you wait just a little bit longer. Before I talk about what my thoughts are on the Super Bowl, I have to ask you a question. Are you looking for a game-changing way to improve your health? Zevo Life is the world's most nutrient-dense whole plant, packed with over 50% plant protein, essential amino acids, fiber, and antioxidants. Just 1 teaspoon a day. It's not a lot. You just mix it in with some water, right? 1 teaspoon a day. Supports your gut, boosts your energy, and promotes healthier skin and hair. If you're ready to feel the difference, visit Zevo.life and start your journey today with a 30-day risk-free guarantee. That's how confident they are that you get 30 days risk-free. What's even better, if you go today to Zevo.life and set up a monthly subscription, you will save $20 monthly. That's 30 servings a month for $69 instead of the normal price of $89. But even better, if you not only want to support your health, but also help support the show, you can use my code, SlappingMeat, at checkout and save an extra 30% off of your first order. Again, that's code SlappingMeat at Zevo.life. That's Zivo.life. Zevo.life. Code SlappingMeat. All right, let's talk about the Super Bowl. We're not going to talk about commercials. I'm not even going to talk about those on Just Yappin', because they sucked. They just absolutely were ass. And excuse my language for saying it that way. They just sucked. But commercials have just sucked to me for the last, 5 years, it feels like. Excuse me. We're going to talk about the game, right? Halftime show we'll talk about on Friday. Right? Let's talk about the game. And there's not much to necessarily talk about as far as action. I'm not going to, in the first quarter this happened. I'm not going to do that. Y'all know I don't do reviews that way. I'm a Patriots fan. I want to break down what I thought about my team and how they played. So I want to say this. I had another, one of my friends who's a Patriots fan. She came and asked me about 3-4 hours ago, hey, how you feeling about the team? And I was like, I'm fine. I have some thoughts. This was in another Discord server that I'm in. And I was like, I have some thoughts. She's like, well, share, because I just need some reassurance that we're not going to suck next year. And I'm not to that point. I think a lot of Patriot fans are at that point that they're buying into the media hype that we didn't deserve to be there, that we were frauds, and I think we need to, as a fan base, just slow down real quick and think a little bit logically, which y'all know I love to do. And so I'm going to be the voice of reason on the New England Patriots. I'm not going to sit here and act like the offense played great. I think that would just be me just lying to you, just bluntly. That would be a lie. What I'm not going to sit here and allow to happen, though, is the media to continue to spread the narrative that Drake May is the reason we lost. Because it's not. The reason the New England Patriots lost, there's two. There's two reasons. The first, now these aren't in order of importance. They're equally as guilty for why we lost. The first is play calling. Josh McDaniels called one of the worst offensively called Patriots games I have seen all season long. I made the joke with my dad, who's an Eagles fan. I was like, I know you fired Kevin Patullo. I didn't know you sent him up to Boston to coach the Patriots, right? Essentially was what I was trying to say to him. That's how bad this felt, right? We ran up the middle 4 times in a row, several different times in this game. It'd be it was, first off, very predictable, right? We get the ball. So we go down. I don't remember. I don't know if their first drive, I believe, ends with the field goal. We're just going to say it did because I don't remember. But we get the ball, right? By the way, defense, spectacular. One area I'm super encouraged is this defense. And we'll talk about what I think the Patriots need to do in the offseason here in a minute. And none of it includes the defense. Well, one thing includes the defense, but we'll get to that in a second. The defense, what should have been a touchdown, the defense holds them to a field goal. And we get the ball first play from scrimmage, that we have the ball first quarter, our first drive, and we call the most predictable play that I think Helen Keller could have predicted. And we ran the football up the middle, and it went for 2 yards. And I sat there. I was watching with a couple of my friends. And I sat there, and I was like, before we even called the play, I said, look, we're about to run the ball. And one of them was like, well, how'd you know that? I was like, because we're so predictable. I told them going in, I said, we're probably going to throw the ball, or we're probably going to run the ball in this game. And I don't know why we didn't adjust. I don't know why we continued to try to run the ball on 3rd and 5 or run screen passes that go for negative 2 yards. It was just awful play calling. The second thing that is to blame for the Patriots' loss is the offensive line. And this is probably the one that I would give the biggest blame to. Now, I could sit here and yell into the mic that we have to fire everyone. I'm not there. I think it's easily adjustable. The first thing is we have to If we're serious about winning football games, the Eagles just released or fired or allowed to walk out of the building. I don't remember his first name. Stoutland. He goes by Stout, I believe is his last name. He needs to be our offensive line coach. Doug Marrone is great as a coach. He's done some good things in this league. But after that performance, I don't believe you deserve to continue to be a coach if that's what you're going to do as the offensive line coach. We need an offensive line coach that's going to instill just greatness, right? And this whole playoff has just been. Let's just be honest. This whole year, Drake May's the most sacked quarterback I think in NFL history over a regular and postseason. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And a lot of that comes from Will Campbell. And this was one of the things that early in the year I was forgiving, right? Cleveland was week 6, I believe, and he gave up 5 sacks to Myles Garrett. And I was like, he's 6 weeks into his pro career. He's against Myles Garrett. I can give him a pass on that. There would be some games he would be fine. He went down with an injury about mid-season. And ever since he's come back from that, just hasn't been playing really well at all. And a lot of the things that he gets caught on with the false starts, a lot of that I think has to deal with the fact that he does have shorter arms than most tackles do. I don't think it's a problem. I don't think that means he can't play well. But I genuinely believe, when he was in LSU, Will Campbell notoriously was seen jumping off sides or false starting, and it just wouldn't get called. And that's not going to happen in the NFL. You're going to get called on it. And, he even false started and still got beat to the spot. On one play, they called him for a false start, and he still got pushed over, right? If you're going to commit a penalty, at least, hold your ground, right? And so, but it wasn't just Will Campbell. It was Jared Wilson beside him at guard. It was Bradbury at center. It was Owenu at the other guard position. And old man Morgan Moses probably just needs to call it a career at this point. This man, he missed every block, it felt, as well. I said to my friend or one of my friends earlier, that was the worst offensive line game performance I have ever seen in my life. That lost us the game, in my opinion, right? Because we went into halftime down 9-0, right? We were down by two scores very well into the fourth, right before the midway of the third quarter, right? It was a 2-score. It became very manageable. We could come back and win this. With the way our defense was playing and doing, right? Now, the only negative play I'll put on Drake May is the interception to Julian Love. That was just a bad throw. And there were a couple bad throws that he made. But here's my thing. Drake May, you can't expect him to be Tom Brady. I think that level of expectation is insane. Was he Tom Brady? No, you can't replicate Tom Brady, even with the best offensive line. Now you throw into the fact that play calling was butt. And then you throw on top of that as well that your offensive line can't block to save your life, and you're sacked 7 times, I believe, in the Super Bowl. And you're running for your life, and now you have to force throws. Now you're rushing things. You're overthinking what's going on. Am I going to get hit? Am I going to get hurt? This offensive line, they pushed and they pushed and they pushed to get an Offensive Lineman of the Year award, saying that they were underappreciated. But then anytime that someone wants to blame them, and I'm a big dude, right? If I played in the league, I would play, right or left tackle. probably guard because I'm only 6'2". I'm not that tall, right? But I fully think that this offensive line needs to be held accountable for how bad it played. How bad they played. And everyone wants to give Will Campbell an excuse that he's hurt. If he was that hurt, he should not have been on the field. I personally believe Vidarian Lowe, and I'm not the biggest fan of Vidarian Lowe, or as I call him during the game when he misses blocks, that fat motherfucker on the end. That's my nickname for him, 59. Vidarian Lowe, bro, 59's also his Madden rating. He's so bad. But I think he could have played better than Morgan Moses or Will Campbell or practically the entire offensive line. And so that's where I'm at with this game. Like, I'm not upset that we lost. I'm really not. I made a joke with someone earlier that I was upset initially, but then I drove home from my friend's house and looked on my on the shelf next to my desk and looked up, and sitting up there are 6 Super Bowl rings. They're replicas. I don't have actual rings, but looking up, in this case, 6 Super Bowl rings, and I looked up at it and said, you know what? I'll be okay. It's not the end of the world. We played bad. Drake played not great. I think a lot of people hear me say that we shouldn't blame him as if I'm saying he played good or great. No, he's been pretty bad this whole playoffs. But I think a lot of that we can't fully put on Drake May because it's play calling and the offensive line play that I think all right. And then the last thing I want to say about this game before I get into what the Patriots need to do in the offseason, from my perspective today, the last thing I want to bring up is someone might say, well, We Too Deep, you said that defenses win championships. And then I want to throw, because y'all could throw that back at me. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I don't think I'm wrong because I added a caveat to it. I said, what did I say? I said defenses win championships if you have a competent offense, right? And how many times have I said the Patriots are never going to beat you by scoring 40 points? They're going to beat you by scoring 20 and keeping you under 20 on defense, right? And so if you take away the pick six, they have 22. You take away, well, really, that's all you really have to take away. We really lost 22-13, and you're gonna need a competent offense to, like, we held them to essentially 22 points, and excuse me, what's 22 minus 17? 18? Because I don't know, did they miss? Well, 17 would have been, because it would have been, I'm trying to say, how many field goals did he hit? He hit, yeah. He hit 5 field goals. Yeah, 5 field goals and 2 extra points, right? That's where he would have. He had 17 points. The kicker did. Actually scored more points than the entire Patriots team did, which is crazy. My point with this being, you take away the pick six, and you take away the touchdown that Sam threw to the tight end, which was just a break. It was the one bad defensive play that we had where the coverage just got broken. And this is always the fear of blitzing a lot is, and that's another thing I'll have to say. The defense played great, especially Christian Gonzalez. And I'll even throw in Milton Williams played great. The problem is if you're going to get to the quarterback, you have to put him down. And tackling is something I think really annoyed me in this game. But for the most part, we scored 13 points on offense. We really only let up, realistically, 15 points. You could say 22, I guess, if you want to throw in the touchdown, right, to the tight end that they outplayed us on. And I'm fine with that. So realistically, we only lose by 9 points. That is a margin that the Patriots should have been able to cover, even if we're just kicking field goals. But the play, and this is where play calling and offensive line comes in, we couldn't move the ball. We couldn't move the ball at all. And so I can't blame fully on Drake May outside of the one interception to Julian Love. A lot of this to me comes into we need some offensive line and we need it now, right? And we need better play calling from our assistant coach of the year winner, Josh McDaniels, right? You can't get to the Super Bowl and then act like this is week one. Like, that play calling was so basic, so boring. You're playing like the best team the league has seen this year. From week one to now, like, the Seahawks have been that team. So, again, I don't feel bad. I'm not upset that we lost. I kind of expected it would happen. And so we just move on. And what does that mean for the show and for the Patriots in general? So let's start with the show, then I'll end with what I think the Patriots need to do in the offseason. Now that we're in the offseason, I have no interest in talking about free agency outside of once signings happen, mentioning them. But I have zero interest in like analyzing what every team needs and all of that. We'll probably do an episode the Monday of the NFL draft. At the end of April, where I'll do a mock draft. I know Junkyard James will probably host a draft viewing party that I'll probably be a part of. Really just depends, probably won't get a lot of consistent football conversation until August, when I start to look towards, I'll probably do a pre-draft show, a post-draft show, maybe once free agency ends, breaking down some of the signings, talk about the draft like a little bit, and then we probably won't talk about football until September or middle of August, where I do my prediction show for the year. So with that said, this show's going to move to very much a wrestling heavy show over the next 6 months or so. But let's end the show with the things I think the Patriots have to do to get better next season. By the way, we play 9 teams next year that have made the playoffs this year. We play Kansas City, Seattle, Buffalo, Detroit, Chicago, all on the road, by the way. I think really the Jacksonville's on the road. I might actually go to that game, to be honest with you, depending on what tickets look like. And so, with that being said, I think the Patriots, let's address the defense. Re-sign Jalen Hawkins, re-sign Caleb Von Chason, and I think those are the two big guys we're scheduled to lose in free agency. Don't touch anybody else. I don't know if you got Gonzo re-signed, but if not, re-sign him. Right? So keep Gonzo, keep Jalen Hawkins, keep Chase on. Essentially, keep the defense. I don't want to worry about Trey Hendrickson. I don't want to worry about, Max Crosby. I think we're fine from a pass rush standpoint with Milton Williams, Tonga. I think Tonga needs to be re-signed. And I'm okay losing Tonga, if I'm being honest. Because we got Barmore and we got Milton Williams. So I'm fine losing him, to be honest with you. But keep Hawkins, re-sign or, work out a deal with Gonzo to extend them before we have to. Keep Chase on. I don't want to worry about free agency on the defense. No money needs to go into people not already on the team right now. Offensively, I don't care about receivers. Booty's good. Diggs is good. Mac Hollins is good. Pop is good. Kyle Williams is good. We're fine at receiver. Hunter Henry's good. We can let Austin Hooper walk. We can either draft a tight end in the 3rd or 4th round, or we can go find, a backup somewhere else. Our money, and currently right now I think we're sitting, estimates are like 35 to 42 million. That money needs to go. Of course, you're going to give Chase on probably about 3, Hawkins probably. Again, I'm guessing. But let's just say between those two players, somewhere between 8 and 10 million. So we're probably going to sit somewhere realistically, let's say around $32 million in cap. And I want that $32 million to get me a legitimate right tackle to replace Morgan Moses, to get me Tyler Lindenbaum at center, and to get me Isaac Ciampa at one of my guards. What I would also do if I was the Patriots is move Will Campbell inside. And so if I can get me Ciampa, my other guard will be... Now, I like Jared Wilson. So, realistically, I'm just going to be honest, I wouldn't get Ciampa. I would move Campbell to left guard, Wilson the right guard. Get me a legitimate right tackle. I don't know who's available free agency-wise. Tyler Lindenbaum at center. And then, if you could find the left tackle, realistically, I need Tyler Lindenbaum and 2 tackles with $35 million, depending on what you re-sign Chase on and Jalen Hawkins for. Right? Realistically, though, Tyler Lindenbaum's probably going to cost you $3 to $5 million, which gives you $15 million each tackle. Move Will Campbell into a guard, Jarrett Wilson on the other side. Possibly trade Owenu if needed. Vidarian Lowe is a free agent. I think he can walk. Thayer Munford can walk as a free agent. I think we can. I don't know. The whole point that I'm trying to say is, what good is signing weapons if Drake May is not going to be protected? And I think we have weapons. We just have to allow Drake May to be able to have enough time in the pocket to utilize them. And so I think, honestly, if we don't upgrade that position of offensive line, I think we're in trouble next year. I'll just be honest. So with that, that's probably the last you'll hear me talk about football probably until free agency in middle of the month of March. But we'll see. Thanks for listening to this episode. I know it didn't go necessarily the way that you guys were expecting or used to. I hope you enjoy We2D Pro Wrestling. Again, I'll take all the comments. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, I would love if you gave me a 5-star review to let us know how you feel about the show. Like, share, subscribe. This is truly a community effort. The more you guys share the podcast with other people on your social media feeds, to friends, anybody like that, the larger this platform can become, the larger the platform becomes, the better it is, right? And the more conversation and all of that, right? And so with that being said, again, I appreciate you all for listening, and unto the next episode, I'm We2Deep. This has been the Slapping Meat Community Show.
So hit that subscribe, come along for the ride, whether it's NXT or NFL time. Going in the ropes and fourth and deep, slapping meat community every Tuesday. Open immunity, yeah, have immunity, yeah, every Tuesday.